Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Project Insights Project Management webinar. The topic for today, 8 Business EQ Strategies. Just a few things to note before we get started. All participants will be put on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please go ahead and type those into your question box, which you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll make sure to get to your questions during the session, but if we can't, as usual, we'll address those in part 2 of this webinar. Also, please note the webinar recording and slides will be available within the Project Insight community, and all of our PM training sessions are valid for 1 PDU free of charge. However, you must be in attendance for the full session. I will email you your PDU certificate by the end of today, so please hold off on emailing me about your certificate until then. For all other PDU information, please visit our PI community. Type in PDU in the search and you will find the PMI rules in an article called Webinars and PDUs. My name is Denise and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. If you're not already familiar with Project Insight, we're a cloud-based project management solution. We work with 2 kinds of companies, those that are rapidly growing and need to scale the way they're managing their projects, and those that want greater visibility across their project portfolio, want more insight into the workloads of their resources, and want a better way to collaborate on projects among team members. If any of these sound familiar to you and you would like to learn more, please feel free to contact us via phone, email, or of course you can always request your demo at projectinsight.net. I'd like to give a warm welcome to our host today, Diane Buckley. Diane is the CEO of Core Performance Concepts. CPC helps companies by training team members in project management, PMP preparation, leadership, and business analysis. Diane has an MBA and a PMP and over 30 years of experience in the PM industry. Welcome, Diane. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Denise. Thank you for having me, and welcome, everybody.
Joining Diane will be our presenter today, Brenda Williams. For over 20 years, Brenda has trained, coached, and guided project managers to become extraordinary leaders and exceptional communicators. She now runs the Academy for Leadership Communication, where she helps individuals and organizations make critical changes in their behavior, mindset, and skills by empowering peak performance through communication, collaboration, and innovation. Please welcome Brenda Williams. Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Good morning to both of you lovely ladies, and welcome to everybody on the call.
All right, ladies. So with that said, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Diane, do you have anything you want to say before I roll?
No, you can roll there, Miss Brenda. Roll away.
Good morning, everybody. I've been up early this morning getting ready, so I'm all motivated and peppy for everybody. Welcome to the call. I'm excited to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, emotional intelligence. Some of you might have heard me say before, I'm from Rhode Island where the loud Italians and the crazy Irish people live, and I grew up in an environment where I do not think emotional intelligence had been invented just yet. So I've learned the hard way about emotional intelligence and how it can directly affect your success and your happiness in life. So it's become a real big passion of mine. And when I founded the Academy for Leadership Communication, I decided to focus on communication and emotional intelligence. So I've been studying it now for over 4 years, and it's really a fascinating subject. So I'm excited to share it with all of you and how it can help you become more effective as project managers. So today it's all about discussing the 8 key critical areas that directly affect your success. So what it's done, business emotional intelligence is really a targeted approach. Emotional intelligence covers a large array of emotions, and many of you have probably taken emotional intelligence assessments in the past or have heard about emotional intelligence. but how do you really apply it? So today is all about a targeted approach in the 8 key areas that you can be using your emotions to be more successful in your business world. So today is part 1 of the webinar. We're going to focus on really creating some self-awareness, understanding what this is and how it can improve your leadership capability. On July 27th, we'll have part 2, where we'll take a deeper dive, and we'll also blend the emotional intelligence clusters with leadership styles so that you can learn how to be more effective in your communication with others. For those of you that haven't yet received my free gift that I love to give out to encourage you to continue the journey around being an exceptional communicator and leader, I will be sending that out to you following the webinar, probably within the next week, because I'm just releasing a brand new program. So you'll be getting all of my new material, which is exciting for me. So just look for that in your inboxes. So what is emotional intelligence? I do complete webinars on nothing but emotional intelligence. Today I'm going to do a brief introduction to the basics of emotional intelligence and spend more time focused on how do you really apply that to business. So emotional intelligence goes to the ability to understand how your emotions affect your behavior and to do something with that information. And that's really the most important part. As I ask a lot of people I work with, have you heard about emotional intelligence? And many project managers have. And it seems to be a very good topic for the project managers that I meet because they interface with so many people, so many different personalities. There's so many different types of dynamics and cultures that they have to deal with in order to deliver a successful project. So they seem to be very interested in emotional intelligence. I hope you all feel that way as well. But the most important piece is, what do you do about it? I've talked to people that have read books, taken assessments, but really don't know how to apply all of that information. And that's what today is going to be about, focusing on what do I really do with this? So why is it important? It really directly affects your leadership capability, how you lead others, inspire them, influence them, how you deal with cultural changes and the ever-demanding pressures of the environments that we work in these days, and how you mentor others. So I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on why it's important, but just recognize how, as we go through the webinar today, recognize how would it make a difference in your leadership capability. And if you believe you've already mastered your own emotional intelligence, how could you use it to coach and mentor and inspire others so that you can get more of what you need? I mean, it really comes down to delivering more successful projects. You need people to get on the bandwagon, get you what you need, you know, in a timely manner. Some of the biggest challenges I hear when I'm working with my project managers is rallying the troops, getting everything they need on time, within budget, within scope, and not everybody's always all that excited about bringing that to the forefront. So the more effective you can be at mentoring and inspiring, the easier it's going to be. So there's an ever-changing pressure in the workplace. We all know that. Some people are doing the jobs of two. There's flatter structures, more competition. The world is ever-changing. So it really has changed the dynamics in the workplace. And the bottom line is, the more emotional, resilient you can be, the more effective you're going to be. I love it when I work with project managers on my program because they learn to go from being stressed out over certain things, like my project isn't coming in on time and we're not within budget, and they learn to not let that affect them. They learn to relieve that stress and that pressure and learn to approach it in a new, more effective way. So if nothing else, the most important piece of this is, how do I relieve some of the stress and pressure that I'm under on a daily basis? How do I shift that? So ask yourself this question, and if you could type some of your answers into the chat box, I'd like to ask Diane to share some of those answers with me. How is your emotional intelligence affecting your business today? And it could be yours or the people you work with. But I'd like to get some of your responses to that so that I can speak to it.
Well, one of the things, while people are responding, Brenda, when you mentioned this about how is it affecting your business and some of the comments you made earlier about, the stress we're under, I always like to tell people, especially when they're project managers, and, we've all heard the comment that project managers are kind of the next generation of leaders for organizations. People don't come to project managers with all the things that go well. They come to the project managers when things are going wrong. So you have to kind of recognize that, that is a lot of your life, which is dealing with problems. So now there's a whole bunch of stuff coming in. So
well,
let's see.
Before you run into that, I'll respond to that. And that is very true. And mindset is extremely important, how you look at those problems. Do you focus on the problem and do you let others focus on the problem and the roadblock, or do you shift that thinking to the solution and the opportunity and the possibilities? And I have a PM that I work with who's mastered my energy leadership program, and she says, when I'm in meetings, I count how many times people say, and the problem is, and they're focused so often on the problem and the solution and the roadblock. And she's able to shift their thinking now to the solution, the possibility, and get them motivated and inspired to focus on that. And that changes the game inside the business.
Right. Well, here's one of the comments that came in, and there's a bunch of them coming in, so everybody's typing away. Demanding/unreasonable expectations lead to employee burnout. Too much crying wolf leads to employee frustration and stress.
That is true.
Demanding and unreasonable expectations and a lot of crying wolf happening in this person's environment.
Yeah, that happens often. I hear it all the time. And it comes down to what's your relationship like with those individuals. But for today's purpose, and we can address that. I just wrote that down. We can make it one of the things we address in part 2. But the burnout and the frustration is prevalent in a lot of companies. And so how do you overcome that, right? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Right. And here's another one from Judy. And hi, Judy. I know you, Judy. Managers with low EQ tend to lose good employees and ultimately fail at getting the job done with the targeted results. It affects the bottom line.
That is true. And I've had people say, hey, I was in a meeting the other day and a top leader, was yelling and screaming at people. So our emotions and our behaviors directly affect our performance. And you can lose good employees, and it can make a difference in motivating and inspiring people to deliver and to buy into your project. And it's not just the negative emotional intelligence. Sometimes it's the lack of emotions. I've worked with people that have been told they're sterile, and they need to have more emotion and more passion. So thank you for sharing that. We'll capture those comments and see how we can address those in the next webinar. So what are the adequate predictors as to why some people succeed and others don't? Over the last 20 years in working with executives all the way down to HR and everything in between, including many, many project managers, it's always been fascinating to me to look at how can I interview somebody who's perfect for the job, and I might have 3 people with the same skill set. But one person can get the job, and then who can keep the job and do well at it? So there's 3 key areas to look at. Your ability and your knowledge is only part of it. Addressing your personality style and how you communicate with people is another piece of it. And then your emotional intelligence, understanding your behaviors and your emotions and how they're directly affecting your relationships and how people respond to you. So observing that and really getting clarity around it is very important. The basic emotional intelligence model covers 4 quadrants. On the left side, you got the intrapersonal. It's really all about you. What is your self-awareness? And I work with many, many people that think they're very self-aware, and then when they do this type of assessment, they learn things about themselves. Matter of fact, I actually learned something about myself I'll talk about later. And I do this stuff every day, so you can always learn something new. But once you create that self-awareness, what do you do about it? Now I'm very clear on my emotions and how I respond and how I show up, but sometimes it's difficult to shift. And how do I manage that? Am I able to catch myself? Am I able to change my approach? And then what about the people you work with? That's the interpersonal, the social awareness, looking at the people around you. Some of the people that you have the biggest challenge working with. And then the most important piece is how do you manage that relationship effectively? And that comes down to the communication, the conversations, the approach that you take, the energy you bring to that meeting, the tone, the volume, and the emotions behind it make a big difference in that relationship management. So the best part about this is it might sound like very logical and easy to do, but it's difficult. And why is it difficult? Because think about the time that you need your emotional intelligence the most. It's when you can be the most angry or upset. And when you get in that state, how much energy does it take to calm yourself? Some of us can get caught up in that tailspin at times where it can escalate and it's like a snowball rolling down a hill, and then even the littlest things can get under our skin or set us in a tailspin. And I'm sure you've all seen this happen in even your personal relationships. You know, you'll keep things in for a long time and then the littlest thing will set you off and you'll react to it. So paying attention to it, understanding your hot buttons, your trigger points, your emotions, creating that deeper self-awareness makes a big difference in being proactive versus reactive. So doing that,
Go ahead. Kind of like, just to kind of, put it in context, I mean, a lot of us have heard about, you get that email that, you read and you just kind of are so angry or so upset with it that you immediately respond to it. And we've all heard when you get those kinds of things, you just should kind of stop and wait before you respond.
Well, yes. It's always good to push the pause button, but sometimes we're not able to push pause when we're in meetings. Email is dangerous, and yes, absolutely. In an email scenario, you can always pause, and email is very directly related to our interpretations of what we think the email says. And so often if you pick up the phone and have a conversation, the context that you received it in wasn't exactly what they meant. Or maybe the person sent it in a moment of their stress and frustration, and they're over it already, and now you're in it. So emails can just really make teams go crazy with each other. But when you're in a meeting with somebody, it's hard to push pause. If you're in that moment, sometimes you react. So being proactive as to what causes you to react and what your typical emotions are is important. So the first step is understanding your comfort zone. When it comes to business emotional intelligence, understanding what your comfort zone is very important. So I'm going to pose a couple questions, and I'm going to slow down here for a second so you can each think about this. And I'm going to ask you to maybe jot down some of your ideas, and if you even want to type them into the chat box, feel free. But this is an area that can be an exercise that you do during the next few weeks. So, different comfort zones, we all have different comfort zones as far as how our emotions are affected. What stresses one person out may not stress the next person out. What motivates one person might not motivate the next person. So recognizing your comfort zone is important. And then looking at the people around you. What are their comfort zones? Because we don't always recognize when we are out of our comfort zone and other people are out of their comfort zone. So for example, you might work with somebody and they're not delivering on your project and you think they're just a real, well, I'm sure you put words to it. But maybe they're out of their comfort zone. Maybe they don't have enough information. Maybe they're not really buying in to what's going on. Maybe they have so many other priorities, they just don't have the time. And they're out of their comfort zone. They're overwhelmed. They're in it deep, and they don't know how to dig themselves out. So understanding the comfort zone of each of you can be a game changer in how you communicate and help others. Now, how far we go outside of our comfort zone will directly affect how quickly we react, and how long we are outside of our comfort zone can directly affect our behavior. So some of you, might go through a very difficult, critical project, and you get behind time, and you're not going to reach your budget, and it might not affect you. You're like, hey, that's just part of being a project manager. I've had projects like this before. We're going to stay in the moment, and I'm just going to deal with it. Other people could react completely different. It's not in their comfort zone. It's not in their mindset to accept and embrace that, and they start getting overwhelmed and affected. So how do you deal with that? Let me hear some of your ideas as to what gets you out of your comfort zone, and how does it affect your emotion?
If you can throw an example out there, Brenda?
Yeah, I'd like an example.
And for some reason, I'm getting a lot of feedback. But one of the things, Brenda, that actually, Brenda, can you mute yourself?
Yes.
We'll see if that works. Yes. Okay. So one of the situations that gets a lot of people out of their comfort zone is, let's say you're on a call with a client, and all of a sudden that client doesn't like what they just heard, and they're angry. And, they're, for lack of a better word, expressing their anger in many different ways. How do you respond to that customer's anger is very important in your role. So that's definitely an uncomfortable situation for many project managers. And I'll put myself on mute, Brenda, so you can respond.
Well, and we have, in most roles, there's always going to be somewhere along the way someone who's not happy, whether it's an angry client or an internal person who's unhappy. It can even happen in our personal lives, because conflict is just part of life. And it's where one person's needs are not being met. And that's going to happen. It's just part of where the world we live in. So today I'm not going to address how to solve that, although I do coach clients on how to have those difficult conversations and respond in a positive way. But what I'll say is, ask yourself, what is your initial emotion that's attached to that? And I'll give you a little exercise that I share with my clients. What's your thought when that happens? And then what's the feeling or emotion that you get? And how have you responded in the past? And how effective has that been? Because for each of us, that's a different journey. For some, it doesn't faze them. Some of my clients have learned not to let that bother them. They have empathy and compassion. They hear the client out. The client feels heard and understood. And then they just go into solution. How do we solve it? They don't focus on the problem. They don't try to defend themselves. They don't take it personally. They don't judge the client for their rude behavior. It saves them a lot of headache and a lot of stress. But for each person, that journey is different. Some can do that, some can't. Some will take it personal. Some will want to react. Some it will trigger that fight in us. We got to fight back. We got to defend ourselves. So ask yourself, when you're in that situation, because almost all of us have been in it, how do you respond? What's your thought, your emotion, your reaction, and how has that worked for you in the past? And what would you like to change? So that goes back to my initial question earlier today. How are your emotions affecting your business? And how would you like to respond in the future? So give that some thought.
Yeah, and in that particular situation, Brenda, put yourself on mute when I talk. Thank you, ma'am. In that particular situation, a lot of times if you want to kind of, most of the project managers are like, what can I do? How can I help? Or I'm sorry. And, sometimes it purely is a matter of, you made the comment, Brenda, that, make sure your customer understands that you understand and that they feel that you have empathy for them. And then get into the mode of, okay, so what would make a difference? How can we solve this? What would make you feel better, for lack of a better word? So it's definitely an area where there's a lot of emotion that goes on back and forth, and the worst thing you can do is react, which then potentially just escalates it on the customer side. So it's definitely an area that has a direct impact to bottom line that we all should be paying attention to. One of the comments from the audience here's another good one with regard to comfort zone, is not having enough information to make a decision and being pressed by leadership to react instead of responding intelligently. So when the boss says, I need an answer now, and you don't feel comfortable giving an answer right now. What do you think about that, Brenda?
Okay. So a couple things before I address that. One, you mentioned empathy. That's one of the 8 key areas we're going to talk about. Very, very important piece of everything you do. And some people are more empathetic than others. Some, it can hold us back from moving forward. So really assessing where you show up on the empathy scale is crucial. Learning when to apply it and when you need to maybe put it aside a little bit for any given situation or person. So that's very true. Empathy, empathy, empathy. For those of us that are drivers, achievers, very task-driven, got to stay focused, sometimes we can lack empathy. You notice I said we.
Never.
So to address the comment, not enough information to make a decision. That happens often. For entrepreneurs, for business owners, for project managers, we are all being pressured to move forward quicker in the business world. So that's not something that's unusual. And it's interesting because we're going to talk about decisiveness today. We're going to get to that in just a few moments. And responding intelligently is part of that. So I'm going to come back to that as soon as I get to decisiveness and address it. So that was a really good comment to get at this stage in the webinar. So we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. So let's talk about this exercise. I'll give you a couple things to think about. Think about a work situation where you were working outside of your comfort zone. How did you know you were outside of your comfort zone? So you just gave me an example, not enough information to make that decision. I'd like to have time to think about it. I'd like to have time to explore it. Maybe I need some more information. So for each person, that comfort zone answer is different. So ask yourself what that means for you. How would others know you were working outside of your comfort zone? So do you respond in a negative way? Do you retract and retreat? Do you seem confused? What's the emotion that's attached? And it might not be words. Sometimes it's the look on your face, your body language, your energy in the room. How are you responding to that situation? And did being out of your comfort zone change your performance? For many of us, if we're confused or we don't have clarity, we might hesitate, and we get so caught up in that we don't have everything we need to make a decision. I'm not even sure how to approach this. I'm so frustrated. I'm so confused. You start focusing on that. It's hard to get clarity and be really sharp, have a sharp, fine-tuned approach because you're so confused and out of whack. And I had that happen to me recently. I was on a training program, and they had all these different documents, and they couldn't get the technology to work right, and the pages were off, and I couldn't figure out where I was in the document, and I was having a really hard time paying attention to the person delivering the webinar. It was frustrating and confusing, and it really took my attention away from the learning experience. How often does that happen in your meetings where you don't have clarity around the project or the direction or the vision? It can really affect your performance. So before I move on, Diane, let's just address that real quickly. Let's talk about it. Have you ever had a situation where you or a client were out of their comfort zone?
Me?
Yeah, anything come to mind?
Oh my God. Absolutely. Yes, we have many situations when we're out of a comfort zone. And like I said earlier, with having a client that gets upset, and a couple times, and you guys can probably appreciate this one, is you're having to give that client some bad news about something that happened that our company made a mistake, and you kind of standing there with egg on your face, and you're having to tell the client bad news, and their immediate reaction is emotional. So it's really hard to you don't want to be super apologetic to where they lose respect for the organization you work for. You really want to come at it and say, what, we have an issue. Here's what it is. Here's what we've done. And again, it's about preparing, and knowing what the potential reaction can be. So if you know that you're going to be giving bad news, you have to take the time to be prepared for whatever that reaction might be. And then
So how would you answer these 3 questions based on that situation? How did you know you were working outside of your comfort zone?
Well, let's just say that there was a big problem, and I have to explain to a customer that there was a big problem. It is never fun to have to tell a customer that you messed up. So definitely knew I was out of my comfort zone. Nobody likes to do that.
Okay. And how did others know? How did others know you were outside of your comfort zone?
Oh, well, internally there might have been some words stated about how upset I was with why we have to do this, because now I have to go back to the customer and tell them. So there probably was some conversation, emotional conversation that happened internally before we actually talked to the customer.
Okay.
But recognizing that, you have to recognize that.
Right. And how did that change your performance?
Again, I've been around the block a few times, so if I look back to maybe 20 years ago, I probably, angered a few people. Now it's more about letting people know the impact of the mistake that was made versus yelling at people. You realize when you're talking internally and you're upset with somebody, you realize that your action caused this problem, and now let's learn from it, but now let's figure out how we're going to have to communicate it to the customer. And it's one of those things where you have to kind of, like you said, pause and not just react.
Good.
But that doesn't mean you're all happy with everybody. You can still tell people that you are disappointed.
Very true. And so learning to express yourself in an effective way, it's all about communication. That's why I tie the emotional intelligence into the external communication skills. But being able to understand what it is that puts me out of my comfort zone. Okay, if I got to deliver bad news to a client, I'm not usually happy about that. I'm going to be a little uncomfortable. So how is the client going to see that? Does it come across in your words, your tone, your energy, your facial expressions? So you got to get clear in your mindset before you even approach that client. And because if not, it can affect your performance. The client can read that loud and clear. For those of you that are new, younger project managers, you might not approach that in the most effective way if you haven't thought through it and you haven't taken the time to really assess the situation and your emotions and how to approach it. And for those of you... Yeah, so that's just a little example. I'd like to ask all of you to do this exercise during the next few weeks and think about the situations that occur and how they affect you, so you can be using that as we go through these exercises.
And if I can add one more comment to that, Brenda, is you made a very good point about how you come across when you're in that uncomfortable space. And I manage a lot of project managers, I coach a lot of project managers, and I listen in. And when you are uncomfortable, it is so obvious that you come across, the collective you, as either, unprepared or nervous or unsure of yourself, no confidence. And so I talk to a lot of project managers on how you, like I said, I use the word strategizing, on how you strategize to have that conversation. And you have to do your risk management to say, you know what, when I deliver this, what are the potential responses I'm going to get from this customer?
Absolutely.
And you have to know the customer. So really it's about strategizing and bringing in that whole, it's not that they're just going to say yes or no. There's going to be some emotion tied to it when you have that conversation.
Very good. I agree. So with that being said, we have 8 clusters to go over that are all about your emotions and behaviors and how they directly affect your work situation and how you do respond. So the first step, like I said earlier, is creating that self-awareness. So I'm going to give you some areas to think about during the next few weeks, and we'll go into these in more depth in the next webinar. So I'm going to go through these with a brief introduction fairly quickly. And then next time we speak, we'll be peeling back the layers of the onion and talking about how these can make a huge difference and how to work with people that are at the opposite end of the scale as to your thought process. So here's the 8 key areas to really pay attention to. Decisiveness is number 1. It's your willingness to make decisions, the need to be in control, and how comfortable you are with that risk, and how big a drive you have to move forward in making those decisions, taking the responsibility to make that decision. Some people are really comfortable with that. Others are less risk adverse. They want other people to give them the direction. They don't want to put their butts on the line. So there's a lot of reasons for that. It can be fair. It can be the way that they make their decisions. They need more information. They're more analytical. A lot of things go behind that. So many times we'll look at people and think, they're difficult to work with. Why am I having such a hard time getting information out of them? It's because they might not be as comfortable as you are with what's going on. Motivation. Your level of energy, passion, and drive, your enthusiasm. How motivated are you coming across? Someone mentioned earlier burnout and frustration. When you're in that zone, your motivation is lacking in your meetings. And it can make a difference in how people respond to you. And in the next webinar, we're going to talk about, again, the opposite ends of the scale. When you're really motivated and excited and passionate and you work with people that aren't showing the emotion of being motivated, typically the people I work with will say I feel like they're disengaged and I do not enjoy working with them and I feel that they're difficult people. And when you have that mentality, you respond to those people in a certain way. Influencing, the drive to influence others, the need to be heard. And this is a really crucial one because you might have the need to influence, but you might not be doing it appropriately. Some people have such a motivation and drive, they want to push things forward at all costs. And it can affect their relationships, and people can retract and withdraw. Some people really don't care about influencing others at all. They just want people to tell them what to do. Adaptability. This is crucial in today's workplace because things are changing all the time these days. Very seldom do I talk to people that say, I'm in a calm, process-driven company and we have the same things occurring every day. No. Most often I hear this, lots of change, lots of shifting, lots of challenges, lots of obstacles, and we have to be ready for it. So where are you at on the adaptability scale? Are you open-minded and flexible and creative to taking new approaches and shifting how you do things? Many project managers I worked with over the years are challenged with this because they go and implement new systems and new processes. And most people will rebel against a new way of doing things. They're comfortable, it goes back to that comfort zone, with what they've done for all these years. Why do I need to change? It's easier the way I do it today. So if they're not adaptable and they're not on that high end of the scale, How can you work with them more effectively? So send in your questions around which of these areas you need the most help with, and I'll address them in our next webinar. So in empathy, this is one I mentioned earlier. This is a big one because so often what makes you successful can be the main thing that holds you back. And the people that are on the high end of decisiveness, that are driven and excited and passionate and really ready to make those decisions and get results, that's gotten you far in life. But if you don't apply empathy when it's needed, it can really hold you back with building a team that's engaged, that follows you, that delivers. Because people are going to have challenges in their lives. They're going to have situations where people are sick, there's death in the family, they might not be have the skills to do what they need to do, and tapping into that empathy to understand them is really important to being able to work with them more effectively. So self-assessing where you show up in each of these areas is very important, and more often than not, where you think you are is not how others are receiving you. So I highly recommend you all do an assessment so that you can really have a clear view of how you show up in each of these areas. Conscientiousness, it's structure. It's the need for plan, having a plan. It's the need to feel comfortable with a reoccurring process. And again, there's opposite ends of the scale. If you're the one that loves structure, you love to have a plan, you love clarity, and you're in a fast-moving, ever-changing environment, you're not going to do very well. And when you combine that with adaptability and you're not adapting to this fast pace, it slows you down, it causes frustration, it causes confusion. So asking yourself, what environment am I in, and where do I need to be on this scale to be successful? So a lot of people need to, well, they don't need to, it's a choice. But what I find is the people that get a clear view of this can make a conscious choice of where they want to be on the scale at any given time once they know how they show up and the people they're working with. They can analyze and assess the projects you're on and which area would be more effective for me. And stress resilience. Some of us deal with the day-to-day pressures better than others. You know, it's really fascinating to me as I coach my clients and I hear their stories of what will stress one person out and not stress the next person out. And I will tell you, stress is all in our mind, and if you shift your thinking and your approach, you can eliminate and at least remove the majority of your stress just by how you perceive a situation. But assessing where you show up, what stresses you out. For each of us, that's a different answer. And emotional intelligence always goes back to self-awareness. So I like to give, when I work with my clients, I give them an assessment, and when they take the assessment around business emotional intelligence, I have them do their own self-assessment before I give them the report and see what they really think. And sometimes it's close, other times it's very different. And so we analyze and we review and we observe how that's showing up and how it's directly affecting your success and your relationships and how effective and productive you can be in what you're doing in the workplace. So let me give you a little example. On the decisiveness scale, this is the willingness to make decisions. On the far left, you got that person who's comfortable taking the lead. They like to consider all their options. They need time to think about it. And that goes back to one of the comments we had earlier. I'm in a meeting, I'm put on the spot, I'm asked to make a decision, I don't have enough data, I'm not really comfortable doing that, and I don't even know how to respond. So it can be frustrating and challenging for that type of person. On the far right, you love taking on responsibility, you need to be in control, you need to make that decision, and you're okay with making the tough decisions. Like, we got to put a stake in the ground. We'll make the best decision we can today with what we have, and let's figure that out together. So your mindset is completely different. And so if you're on the left and you're working with people on the far right, it can cause some conflict. Sometimes you can openly see that. Other times people stuff it. But the way it shows up is you're not getting their buy-in. You're not getting things delivered to you quick enough. You're getting a little pushback. So ask yourself when those things are occurring, why is that happening? Typically
I'll give you a good example, Brenda.
Okay. What's that?
So I'll give you a good example.
Okay, great.
That we all deal with. Asking somebody for an estimate of their time. How long is it going to take to deliver this task for the project? Some people are, no problem, give you an estimate. Other people give you constantly, well, I don't know yet. I have to look at it further. I can't really tell you that. It's two ends of the spectrum. And sometimes it's really hard to get estimates out of people. And if you don't get an estimate out of them, you can't get their buy-in for what's going to be delivered on the project.
Yeah, that's a good example. And then sometimes it's so simple to just ask them how comfortable they are. And so I have a project manager in our meeting. She says sometimes people won't express their words out loud. So we started implementing a little thing they do at the end of each project management meeting, and they say, okay, on a 1 to 3, we're going to all put our hands up right now. 1 finger means I'm really comfortable and I'm totally bought in and I know exactly what needs to happen. 2 is, well, I still have some questions. And 3 is, I really have some concerns. And she said, it's funny, people will put their fingers up before they'll express their words out loud. But when you look around the room and you see the fingers, if you got a bunch of 3s in the room, you got some work to do. So it gives you a real good pulse on where you're at. So here's some of the feedback people say, and I've heard from my clients once they start implementing this into their workplace. They learn to really start looking at what they say and what they do and observing it and how it affects others. How it directly affects their results. So many times, if you just change your approach and what you're saying and how you're approaching people and the emotion you're using, what you get back will be completely different than what you've been getting. So if you have a relationship that you want to change, it's very important to take a new approach. Picking up cues from others, not getting as impatient, understanding why they think the way they think. If they're on the opposite end of the scale of making decisions, just understanding and accepting there's some people that need more time, that need more data. How can I work with them more effectively? How can I become aware of my reactions and do it differently and more effectively in the future? When I was going through this program, and I picked EBW because I've explored all of the emotional intelligence programs, taken all the assessments, I found that this was the only one that really targeted emotional intelligence to how to be successful in business. And I love one of the stories that the psychologist that founded this program shared. He said, I tell my clients that decisiveness and motivation really show up in so many facets that you don't recognize. He said, I love sailboats. I bought my dream boat a couple years ago, and after I get off work at the end of the week, I just can't wait to get to my sailboat. He said, so it's about an hour-and-a-half drive to where my boat is. He said, and I am so passionate and motivated and driven to get there on the weekend, I just can't wait. He said, but my wife feels differently. She's had a long, hard week, she's tired, and she's not on the same side of the scale I am. He said, so I made a decision to change. He said, and people have looked at me and said, why did you need to change? And he said, because I want to have a successful, happy marriage and not get divorced. So ask yourself, where are the areas that you need to change to adapt to people and situations and projects so that you can be more successful? Next time we're going to talk about leadership styles. These are directly related to Daniel Goleman, who's really the father of emotional intelligence in my eyes. He has an array of information on leadership styles, and we're directly tying those into business emotional intelligence. How do you adapt your leadership style and your approach to be more effective with the people you work with? So here's an exercise to consider. During the next couple weeks, observe yourself and others in these areas, these 8 areas, and write down your goals about what you want to change about your emotions. Maybe find an accountability partner so you can find out how you're really coming across. And observe your performance as well as other people around you in these 8 key areas. Just start observing and seeing how people respond and what you can learn from this whole experience. And then we'll do a deeper dive next time. So these are the areas that this EBW is used to change the emotions and behaviors in the workplace. It's used for recruiting, it's used for leadership development, coaching people, and most importantly in my world, building high-performance teams, getting people to interact and work together more effectively. Next time I'll speak about how you look at a group, a team of people. And everybody has different dynamics in these 8 key areas. Once you understand each other more effectively, you can communicate in a different way that will boost your performance because people will have a better comfort zone. So we have some upcoming webinars. I've spoken about the next one in July. I'll be speaking on another one in August. You can always email me if you want more details on that. For those of you that want to really boost your emotional intelligence, I have a workshop coming up that I'm very excited about. I have 2 ticket options for you. One is just attending the workshop, and I'm going to blend the emotional intelligence with active listening and powerful questions and how to have some of those difficult conversations. And most importantly, I believe ticket option 2 is the best approach because you're going to take a business emotional intelligence assessment prior to the workshop and have a coaching session with me so you can learn to apply this in your world. Special offer for all of you, ticket option number 1 is $148, and 2 with the coaching session and assessment is $248. So I really priced that affordably because I would love to invite all of you to come and join and to master this in the business world. So here's my contact info. If you want to take advantage of this, reach out to me. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Do we have anything that came through, Diane, that we should address?
Oh, absolutely. Have all kinds of stuff. Let me get one here. Okay, it's a long one, so bear with me. Make sure I can. Okay, so I am constantly in situations where I feel I am out of my comfort zone, given the topic at hand and my area of expertise. Others know when I am up against something I'm not comfortable with because I would be honest in my approach to the situation, indicating that though it is not my area of expertise, I am willing to see what I can come up with. It does not adversely impact my performance as I see it as a personal challenge. I am eager to try to tackle the situation as best I can. I try to use my best judgment. Hold on a second.
Is there a question?
I try to use my best judgment, gather as much information as I can to reach the best possible outcome for the stakeholder, my department, and myself. So what's your response to that? Is that a good approach, Brenda?
Well, absolutely. I think we cannot be expected to know everything. And people that try to cover up for that and pretend that they do, it gets them in trouble. And people see through that eventually. So being real, open, and authentic is part of what my values and what I believe in. The more open and authentic and real you are, the more people will gravitate towards you because you're sharing, you're being open, and you're being clear and confident in your approach, and you're also willing to say, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to go get the answers. So kudos to you. Congratulations that you're willing to be open and what I call vulnerable in a positive way. And I see that that builds closer relationships. The people that go in trying to act like they know everything to cover up what they don't know alienate people.
Excellent. And how about this one? You just to respond to this one. My comfort zone is often affected by how I am approached by team members or leaders.
Okay, so is there any more to that?
No, but I'm looking at it from the perspective that, you know, how people come to us affects how we respond. So
Okay. Well, I love
Patricia's
that.
basically saying that she's impacted by how people come at her.
Okay, perfect. I love that one. It's a big one for me because I help people learn about their mindset and their triggers. So what I'll share is if you get real clear on your initial instinct to those different types of reactions, so if it's a positive, happy, joyful one, most of you don't need help. But let's just say someone approaches you in a negative, argumentative way. My question would be for all of you, how do you respond? Some of us will go into fight zone, which is a natural instinct. We're going to fight back. Others will retract and they'll avoid. So what is that for you? And be clear on that ahead of time because you can change your perspective on that. A couple tools that I share in my programs is don't take it personal. Don't judge others. How they approach you is on them. That's who they are. But how you respond is on you. And if you respond in an emotionally intelligent way in a positive manner, you are the best leader and the better person. So ask yourself, how am I responding? Is it the most appropriate, best way? Am I happy with the way I'm responding? And if you're not, how would you like to respond? And what will it take to change to get there? And I'm willing to tell you, based on growing up with zero emotional intelligence, once you get real clear on that and you look in the mirror and you understand who you are, we all have things we can change about ourselves. And change takes effort. It takes tools. It takes a new mindset. It takes practice. And that's why I'm passionate about what I do. I love helping people change their mindset, learn the skills and the tools to approach any given situation in the most positive manner so they can be more successful in business and happier and more joyful in their personal lives. And it all directly reflects upon your relationships and ties back to communication. That's why I became a communication specialist. So thanks for that question because it really ties into summing this up. And so ask yourself those questions, see where you're at, and let me know if you want to do a deeper dive and take the assessment. Feel free to reach out to me. So I think we're out of time, Diane. Thank you for the great questions and the interaction. And feel free to send some more questions for part 2. I'm excited to talk to all of you in a few weeks.
Okay. So thank you, Brenda. That was awesome. And I'll just kind of make a couple little notes here about the promotion that Core Performance Concept has. If anybody wants to take some online project management courses, if you are attending this webinar, you get 10% off on those online courses, and you can click on that link there. And I think, Denise, are you picking it up from here?
Yes, I am. So just so everyone knows, I will include that link in your question box. All right. Okay, so to earn PDUs, you will receive your PDU certificate via email by the end of today. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, anything else I can help you with, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. You will earn 1 PDU per webinar attended. Register your PDU. Go ahead and log in to pmi.org. Log in as a member of PMI. And go ahead and fill out all the information below, which will also be in your PDU certificate. For those of you on social media, I'd like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe to our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @ProjectInsight. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest in PI news. In our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next project management training in 2 weeks. So if you have not already done so, go ahead and visit our webinar calendar, where you will find a number of webinars in leadership and IT methodology and Agile. They are all free of charge, so go ahead and check them out. Register for as many as you'd like, and we hope to see you next time. And with that, that's all we have for you today. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Diane, for a great session. We have a lot of great comments in here, so I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.